Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Transform Your Business with Artificial Intelligence. Today presenting, we have Stephen Harris, who is our ISV Channel Manager from Bytes. He'll be giving you a very brief overview and introduction before handing over to Phil Sheen, who is the Head of Public Sector at Thoughtonomy. He'll be presenting the duration of this webinar. Before passing over, just some very quick housekeeping for you all to note. During the webinar, you will be muted, but you can submit questions at any time via the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll have a few minutes at the end just to hold a very quick Q&A session, so we'll read these out to you and answer. The webinar will be made available to you afterwards as we're recording. And there is a critique form at the end, so if you could just fill that out, we really value your feedback. I'll now hand you over to Stephen, who will kick off the webinar. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a quick introduction from me before we get started with Thoughtonomy. So my name's Steve Harris. I run the ISV partner program here at Bytes. Just wanted to give a quick overview, first of all, of Bytes and Thoughtonomy working together before we hand over. Essentially, Bytes is, if you don't know us already, Microsoft's leading Azure partner with over 35 years of first-hand industry knowledge in the IT industry. We have an unrivaled cloud experience and a very highly skilled partner ecosystem. And I'm now in charge of a new partner program running with ISV partners to deliver cloud solutions out to our customers. We've signed Thoughtonomy up as a premier partner with Bytes. They're a recognized leader in intelligent automation, a Microsoft Gold partner, and a transformative solution which can drive strong business value for you. So we've got a webinar together today with Phil Sheen, who's going to present more around the Thoughtonomy proposition, around what it can deliver for you. So I'm going to hand that over to Phil Sheen.
Good morning. What we're going to run through in the next half an hour or so is a brief introduction to software automation, robotic process automation, but more importantly, intelligent automation, and hopefully try and help articulate what the key differences are between those, particularly between RPA and intelligent automation. Talk generally around the concept of it, but also specifically around the Thoughtonomy proposition. So very happy to take questions at the end. So please do feel free to fire anything in as you choose. So what we're looking at here with Thoughtonomy is fundamentally about the future of work and how as not just as organisations, but as society and as individuals, we actually engage with the organisation we work for, our colleagues, but more importantly, how we actually execute work. And so the key theme that I'd like to run through the next maybe sort of 25-30 minutes is, although, and the irony of this is not lost on me, although we are a leading technology business and I'm sat in Bytes' offices here in Leatherhead and they are a leading technology vendor, actually the lens we should be looking through this is one of actually how do we as individuals execute work within our organizations. And that's the critical piece here, is not to focus too much on the technology, but fundamentally actually what is it we're looking to achieve as outcomes from the engagement we have with the work that we do. So when we talk about this, there are sort of three core areas or three key barriers to productivity, or what I would bluntly term as areas of inefficiency. And they're not particularly groundbreaking, but they're relevant to every organization. So this is not specific to the public sector. It's not specific to the private sector. It's not even specific to the UK. Every organization globally will face these challenges. First off is the inefficiency of us as the human beings. Being a little bit negative about humanity for 30 seconds, we as people are the weakest part of the entire conversation. So if we look at a very simple breakdown of a day, so take a chunk of time, 24 hours, we will generally speaking on average go and do an 8-hour working shift. Granted, doctors, nurses, police officers and firemen do sort of a different piece, but generally speaking, we'll turn up to an office and we'll do an 8-hour working shift. However, there are 3 chunks of 8 hours within every day. And so instantly, before we even get onto the technology side of things, we have this mass inefficiency, which is due to us being humans. Added to that, the fact that we get tired, we make mistakes, we lose interest, we have fat-fingered moments, errors creep in. Secondly, is the fact that as organisations, every organisation is built on individual silos, parts of the organisation or departments or directorates in order to execute certain work. So if we work through the really standard common back office shared functions, there's normally things like HR, IT, payroll. Then there's absolutely core line of business. So if we're looking at financial services, there's front middle office, there's clearing, there's execution. If we're talking in terms of the public sector, local government, there's things like revs and bends, planning, environmental services, adult social services. And very, very generally speaking, because we as humans are single skill set capable as individuals, that skill set is stuck in that resource. So it's not possible for us to transition the human skill set or capability or the resource across the organization in a linear fashion in order to address where that work might be coming in. And secondly, actually, or thirdly, what we have is disparate, disconnected applications. So every organization will have its teams and its functions and its silos, and each team and function will have their own independent applications, their own processes, their own business tools, and their own ways of doing things. And fundamentally, although yes, you can go and buy, if you're lucky enough, APIs, or you can build them, those are normally quite expensive or quite lengthy to deploy, and they're also a snapshot in time. The applications change, you then need to go and rebuild those. And ultimately, you could also go and buy big ERP or CRM systems. And whilst they are absolutely fantastic and there are some great tools out there, we are yet to see an ERP system that spans an organization seamlessly end to end, and probably doesn't cost an awful lot of money and time to deploy. So those are the three sort of backdrops through which we're working. And then what we're looking at is actually more around what does the workplace of the future look like, and this is where we start getting on to trying to dispel some of the myths that robotics and software automation is not this dare I say Daily Mail-esque front page sensationalist headline that it's the rise of the robots and everyone's jobs are going to be done and dusted in the 2 years. This is actually fundamentally about how do we take this new technology skill set and how do we use it to augment our existing workforce? And I'll come on to that in a second. So what we have is looking at how AI, machine learning, automation, and robotics can actually allow us as human operatives who are very, very skilled and very, very valuable, how can we free ourselves up to do more of the really important stuff? And that's adding value. And this is very, very fundamental to the entire engagement that we have with the market, we have with our partners, and we have with our clients, and hopefully that our clients have internally with their internal stakeholders, so senior leadership, staff, teams, so on and so forth, which is around actually freeing you and I up as human beings to do the stuff that we're really, really good at doing, and ultimately probably the thing that we joined the organization to do. And so this is where we start talking around actually what's the balance between, and I should just jump forward one slide and I'll come back. This is a very, very simplistic but actually quite powerful slide, which is that all of the stuff on the left hand side is fundamentally what we want our it's a bit of a skewed slide there, but fundamentally what we want our humans to be doing. So if we think about the benefits that humans bring to the conversation, there are three core aspects which computer systems are on the verge of dealing with, but still not there just yet. So the ability to deploy emotional intelligence, so emotional empathy around being able to either engage with another human being, either over the phone or in person, and physically understand whether that person's happy, distressed, upset, excited, so on and so forth. The second aspect is around creativity. So the ability to think creatively in a situation, whether that's real time or reactively, but most importantly, the aspect is around subjectivity. So the ability for us as humans to take different data sets or data points and actually then think subjectively around what that might mean. So if we think about something that I'm very familiar with in the public sector is a police officer or an individual that's manning a command and control center in a police force, taking a disparate pieces of information, carrying out a threat, harm, risk assessment as the police do, and then carrying out an action. So there's a very real difference between a set of information that comes in, which might mean Mrs. Miggins' cat stuck in a tree again, versus actually a red flag for a child abuse case sort of 3 doors down the road. And actually, what do you do with that data? And actually, as a human being, how do you make a more value-based decision based on what to do? So what we're talking about here is actually specifically is how to approach automation. And there's a lot of hype and a lot of I think sort of misunderstood information in the market around what automation is and what it does, but fundamentally it's looking at trying to unlock the value within organizations and trying to help organizations realize the best value from their people. And so when we talk about this, we actually see this happening in a sort of a three-step way. So something we call the three waves of value. So fundamentally, there's 3 steps to how organizations either could or should approach automation. Fundamentally, the very quick one is actually, it's more of a short near-term tactical requirement, which is actually being able to realize short-term value through improved efficiency. So you have an existing process, you bolt in automation, and then actually you just gain a very short-term quick return on that. What we've seen in that, there are examples such as EY, where we've deployed automation within their HR part of the organization. And so what they've seen is they've seen processing time cut down from 45 to 55 minutes per instance of onboarding a new member of staff down to less than 4 minutes. Clear monetary saving. EY, particularly as a global consulting firm, 190 odd thousand people globally, 20,000 times a year they execute that same process. So what we're talking about here is highly repetitive, mundane, low value tasks that are not having any human value associated with them. As we mentioned a moment ago, that process doesn't have any subjectivity or creativity or emotional intelligence required. There's a form, new starter form with my names, my details on it, my date of birth, my national insurance number, my address, so on and so forth. And it's about taking that data and processing that through the process or the sausage machine of onboarding new staff. And that's a great example where actually you take an existing process and actually it's ripe for automation, and it's a very, very valid place to start. Second area is where we look at actually enhancing business performance. So this is where you start seeing greater benefits derive, because after the very simple way of just unlocking value, what you're now able to do is actually refocus some of those resources that were executing the process in the first place and actually have them doing something of a higher value within the organization. And a lot of this comes to a bigger societal piece around the reskilling and retraining and redeployment of people. But fundamentally, if you think that the individuals who are best suited to potentially optimize a process or improve that process are the people that are actually executing it day in and day out, but we ask ourselves, well, why can't they? The easy answer is they can't because they're busy executing the process. They're in the trenches fist fighting. So actually, if we can extract those people out of the process, free them up 20, 30, 50, 80% of their workload, allow them to focus on the higher percentage, higher volume exception piece, it then allows you as an organization to internally refocus those people back in to help optimize that process. Lower cost of growth and expansion, more sustainable margin and growth at risk, standard kind of sort of buzz expressions that we see coming out of that. I'll skip on to wave 3 because this is the really interesting bit. So if one takes an existing process and says, right, that's the process we have end to end, new starters process, a leavers process, maybe you have an accounts payable process, whatever it is, something within IT or payroll, you bolt automation onto the side of that. The process is fundamentally the same, but actually what you're doing is you're just bolting automation on to make it slicker, quicker, more manageable, and actually executed a higher percentage of the times correct. If we then shift this and think, actually, when we go through service redesign, when we go through target operating model reviews, as an organization, when you go through that, the ultimate position to look at is in maybe, I'm not putting a timeline, but 6 to 12, maybe 18 months down the line, once you've been through those first 2 iterations of deploying automation, you kind of have the battle wounds, you've got the scars, you've learned what's worked, you've learned what's not worked well. But fundamentally, as an organization, you'll come to a point where you need to redesign your service propositions or your service target operating models or your engagement models. And actually, when you come to do this in the future, it's fundamentally building those with automation at the core. So to give you an example, we're currently having a discussion with the British Transport Police. They currently have 3 command and control centres, 2 in London, 1 outside of London, and they're looking at rationalising that down to 1 central command and control centre, reviewing their target operating model, reviewing their service proposition, and also their processes for how they engage with regional police forces and other parts of law enforcement and public sector. the conversation we're having with them is actually what they're now going to do is, both as they're physically building the physical command and control center, but also as they're reviewing their entire target operating model, is actually building their next tranche of processes over the next 5 to 10 years, but fundamentally with automation at the center of those processes. So it's not having an existing process and bolting automation onto the side. It's completely shifting it on its head and actually executing a process in the year 2020 and onwards, which has automation built at the core. And that's actually where you start to realize real business value, because organizations, both public and private, start building a completely differentiated market offering, which actually allows you to either be fundamentally more competitive, gain first mover advantage, and actually probably a speed to market piece, which currently hasn't been executed. So what we're seeing now, particularly in some of the organizations that we have as clients, we're seeing organizations fundamentally designing new service propositions with automation at the start of it. So there's organizations that we know deal in the healthcare sector, rostering, staffing, and actually they're an organization that have started, they're turning over just over £15 million worth of annual revenue a year now, and actually they've only got 5 staff, because what they've built is they've built their entire proposition and their entire operating model around a virtual workforce. So rostering, all online, app-based, but in the back end, as soon as somebody's executing a request or actually putting themselves up front for rostering capability, that's all being executed in a completely automated fashion. We've got the same being seen through Hovis. They're actually now building an entire delivery model, both around how they execute processes internally and as an organization, and also externally through their supply chain, with automation at the absolute core of what they're doing. So just talk a little bit around autonomy and kind of the difference between base RPA and intelligent automation. This graphic will build in a second, but what you're seeing here is fundamentally from the top down. We see sort of really simple, basic organizational parts of the organization, which are anything from shared back office, core operation and front office functions. Each of those capabilities within the organization have disparate teams or departments. And then again, within each of those teams or departments, as we come down, as I mentioned earlier, they have their own business processes, their own business tools, and their own business applications and their systems. And largely, they don't interoperate. So what we're seeing is, in the past, automation has been a quick, tactical, what I would probably term more a technical solution to addressing those requirements. It's fantastic. It has a massive plus side. Base RPA has the ability to integrate with applications at the front end, so it very, very much mimics the behavior of human beings, and by that we mean it logs in at the front end of the application. So the general rule of thumb is, if you can present an application to me as a human being and I can log in as Phil Sheen, then fundamentally the RPA agent can access that application in the same way. So very much the same way as a remote user dialing in from home or touching down in a remote office or a coffee shop, dialing in over a secure connection and then accessing the application at the front end. That allows for what we call frictionless deployment. It means there's no change to one's application estate or infrastructure that needs to be made. The downside to it is that fundamentally, actually, a lot of that is either hosted on site, so it has to be stood up on your infrastructure or your servers, fed, watered, servered, patched, maintained, all the rest of it at your cost, or actually still has to be installed on local devices, so laptops and PCs. And then clearly, as we all know, there's a single point of failure discussion there, which is if that machine or terminal goes pop, or dare I say it, somebody puts it under their arm and walks out of the office with it, never to be seen again, that's the automation gone. So what we've moved and what we have from day one is we have a cloud-based proposition, which is natively predicated on Microsoft Azure. So it's only pushed out from Azure. So from a government protective marking scheme position, that's certified to official as standard. It comes with all of the ISO and security accreditations that we all know and love from Microsoft and everything that's baked into the Azure platform. But fundamentally, what that allows us to do is to create a cloud-based pool of digital labor. And these digital workers are multi-skilled, multifaceted, and fundamentally can go anywhere in your organization and execute any process any time of the day or night. So what we teach our partners and customers to do is actually build out processes within this platform. Those processes all have characteristics such as they happen a certain number of times every day or week or month. They take a certain number of minutes to execute, and also there's a business rule or parameter associated with that process. And within that platform, we have quite a deep, rich amount of AI and machine learning. And what that allows the platform to do is understand all of the nuances and metrics and variations and SLAs relating to the processes you've built out, and then hand that work off to a virtual worker to execute in the most expeditious and timely manner possible. So hypothetically, you have 20 odd processes built in there. They have different SLAs and different metrics around how they happen. And you might also want to schedule those to happen in a different way. But what we're looking at here is the dynamic and intelligent allocation of resource anywhere in your organization. So what we're all of a sudden doing is transcending out of the constraints of that we are currently dealing with our human workforce, allowing our humans to focus on the more value-based bits and pieces, and then actually allow the grunt work to be carried out by the automation capability. So the main difference there, obviously, and just build this out. So if we look at the difference between a SaaS model and say a traditional RPA model, what we have within the platform is a single platform with a single license fee that has a set of capabilities, which if one was going to go and build separately, these are fundamentally most of the components that you would probably want to look at. And again, think about this through the lens not of technology, but how work comes into your organization. So work comes into your organization via emails, it might come into a contact or a call center, you might have a web self-serve portal that customers or partners complete online and come into the organization. You might be somebody that receives your work orders and instructions through work queues and APIs coming out of applications. And fundamentally, actually, it doesn't really matter any about those. What you're giving is you're giving somebody a task to do and then a set of actions to execute to generate an outcome for a process. And so all of what you see on the screen there are just effectively trigger mechanisms and capabilities that instigate work. Now, individually, one would have to go and buy those capabilities. So RPA clearly on the left-hand side there is one capability within that first stack, but as is backup and recovery, database licenses, storage, servers, so on and so forth. And then if you come to the second column, what you're looking at are some of the channels by which you might have work instigated. So email client, SMS gateway, self-serve portal. You have to go and stand those all up yourself individually. You have to try and knit them together. The onus is on you to try and make that work together. What we've done is created a single platform where all of those capabilities are built in natively into the platform, and you just consume them as and when you choose to. So this is very simply about the instruction and the execution of work. You don't need to get hung up on, oh, do I need to go and buy an extra widget to bolt in? The widgets are all included. Single platform, single license fee, SaaS deployed. It comes with all of the benefits that we know from cloud. Just running through this, conscious of time. So on the right hand side, you have some of the channels that we've mentioned that trigger work effectively. The ability in the center for work to be executed and or should I say orchestrated, and then handed off on the left hand side for individuals to go and execute that work. And what we're saying is actually think about all of those processes that don't require any form of cognitive human input, and actually it doesn't matter what channel they come in from on the right hand side. Agnostic of the channel, more importantly, agnostic of the application that the virtual worker needs to integrate with on the left-hand side as well. So just to reaffirm that, what we have is a very, very unique platform where we have all of this capability built in. So it's SaaS enabled. You can read all the little buttons there yourselves. So multi-skilled virtual workers. IADA is our core platform. This is our IP, and this is the ability to effectively orchestrate work or the digital worker across the workforce. So just to run through these very briefly, so exactly everything that you expect in the year sort of 2019, not too far off 2020, from a SaaS platform. It's an evergreen platform. So as we deploy new capabilities and new functionality within the platform, you're able to consume it natively without any additional upgrade capability. We can deploy it globally because of our relationship with Microsoft. Deployed out of Microsoft Azure DCs almost instantly, and it's enterprise grade. We're looking at multi-skilled virtual workers. So this is the ability to move out of base RPA capability and move to a much more, as we say, dynamic and intelligent allocation of work across any part of the organization. You can schedule, you can work queue, and you can work order, or fundamentally actually allow the platform to work in the most efficient way possible and execute work. It will also bring you back suggestions around, actually, we think we can execute this process potentially quicker at 2 in the morning rather than 2 in the afternoon. Would you like me to execute that? And that's where aspects of the machine learning come in as well. We also have a very rich set, because of underpinning by the Microsoft Cognitive Services and the bot framework capability that we have built into the platform, the ability to use natural language, so natural language classification and natural language processing. Also in, I think, up to at the moment 62 or 63 different languages. I touched on IADA a second ago. This is effectively our IP, but using proprietary AI algorithms. What this allows you to do is allocate work and the workforce in that very dynamic way across the organization. It allows you to try and optimize on going through those 3 waves that we mentioned before, moving through the wave 1, which is that sort of, that more tactical piece, move into wave 2, and hopefully where you actually move into wave 3, which is starting to realize and actually reshift how you deliver and build processes and service offerings within and delivery models within your organization from day 1. And it's built for business users. So although we, at a more granular level, those that have a technical understanding probably are able to learn and pick up the platform quicker, and make no bones about that. Fundamentally, there is no coding or developing in the traditional sense required. It's a very, very natively intuitive way of building out processes. We have a very, very amazing tool within the platform called Wireframer, which allows you to build processes out using best practice and uniformity in a very, very defined and more agile timeline. Allows you then, as we said earlier, to actually build consistency in how you execute processes. So chances are at the moment you go to a team of 10 people and ask how they execute an accounts payable process, you probably find that there's variations within there, or an HR process. What you can do here is building that level of consistency. But fundamentally, coming back to the point that this is not a technology engagement, this is fundamentally a business engagement around allowing organizations to execute better outcomes within their business. We talk about some of the benefits. So clearly what we've talked through is a SAS delivery model. You can deliver this in a matter of hours and days and weeks rather than weeks and months and years. Ultimately, that leads to a faster ROI. The risk is lower because it's a SaaS model. And from our side, obviously, we see customers able to deploy it quicker. So multiple benefits, really coming back to the same fundamental piece. We have a very deep-rooted support structure, both internally, natively with us as the vendor, but also through our partner ecosystem and the likes of Bytes, who are fully enabled and accredited partners. So we look at supporting you through that engagement lifecycle. It's very much about understanding what the organization, you as your organization, is trying to achieve, building a set of capabilities around that, either working with a partner to deploy managed service, or actually, if you wish as a partner or as a client, an end user, to be enabled yourselves, we help you build out that center of excellence or that automation team. That obviously allows you, from a self-sustainability perspective, to have an in-house capability which you can deploy at your speed, your cadence, in line with your organization, your processes, but also at your internal cost of delivery. And we have quite a rich customer success program, which is fundamentally there to help you get the most out of the platform. So being very open and candid, we are a software business. We are not a consultancy firm. We have an interest in organizations leveraging the most they can out of the platform by putting as much as they possibly can. So the more processes you put into the platform, the more capacity of virtual workers you need, so on and so forth. So it's in our interest to help you get the most out of the platform and utilize it as best you can. And because when we give you the platform, or your partner gives you the platform, what you build within that platform becomes your IP. So the processes and the flows and the objects you build within that become your knowledge and your property. What it allows you to do either within your organization, or particularly if you sit within a community, particularly relevant for the public sector, is to share best practice within your community. So what we're seeing, particularly in the health and local authority space now, is that one one health trust is building out an outpatients program. They're building out automations in their outpatients program, and then another trust is going out and building automations in their referrals process. And rather than doubling up on those, they're then sharing those automations and aspects of those automations at the back end within a community that we are fostering, but effectively handing over to the client side and allowing them to run themselves. So it becomes almost self-empowered, self-generating kind of community. And I think that brings me to an end. So what I'll do is I'll hand back over to Cassie in a second, but very happy to answer any questions at all racing to that or any other wider topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil, and thank you, Stephen, for the introduction there at the beginning. As we said earlier, if you do have any questions, please pop them in the questions box on the right-hand side of the screen. If there's anything you wanted to ask for autonomy or bites regarding what you heard today, we will be sharing the recording with you if you wanted to play it back. And as we did mention earlier, there will be a feedback form that will just pop up at the end. So if you could fill that out, we really do appreciate your feedback on these sort of things. Everyone's feeling a little bit shy this morning. Too early. If you do have any questions at a later date, obviously you can speak to your Bytes account manager, or you can email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. But if that is everything, which it looks like it is, then thank you everybody for joining this morning, and thanks for your time, and hope you all have a great day.